Welcome to my new channel, In the Groove with Juanis. Today, we're going to be talking about the elements of music and how you can incorporate the elements of music into making your beats. So, if you if you definitely have questions or looking for some tips and tricks on making beats and how to incorporate some of the get a better understanding of music theory, you're definitely in the right place. So let's get in the groove. All right. So again, today we're going to be talking about the elements of music. And before I do, just remember, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel, In the Groove with Juanis. Hit the bell for notifications. Hit the like button. Definitely help a brother out. Hit that like button. Leave a comment if you got questions about today's topic, on things that are on some of the things I'm going to cover. Leave a comment. Ask me a question. I definitely try to reply and give answers to your questions, especially revolving around music theory. So go ahead and hit the like button, hit the bell, and leave a comment for me. Also, follow me on Instagram at Juanis Williams. Uh, I do periodically put up some of the beats that I'm working on my Instagram page. So go ahead, you can definitely check that out. See what I'm working on. So go ahead and follow me on Instagram at Juanis Williams. So again, I do. So we're going to be talking about again the elements of music. Before we get into talking about the elements of music, I wanted to play this clip from the movie Get Up, uh, and it's the rehearsal scene where Chadwick Boseman, playing James Brown, is he's got a rehearsal with his band. They're going over Cold Sweat, and this really kind of really to me is kind of the main idea of making beats. So let's take a look at this clip really quick.
Understand? The drop before the beat. You dig it?
What's it mean the top of the bar?
It means on a downbeat.
Fine.
Mr. Brown,
Yes, Miss M.
we rehearsed it just like you told us. We got it just like you like it. Jimmy can't play that with the part he's got. We can change the part if you like.
Don't change it. Did I say change the part? What's wrong? You lost your soul?
You lost your soul,
Sir,
lost your feeling.
no
Change.
Rest of y'all lost your soul?
What we was talking about is, so right when you're
Lost your
making
feeling?
beats and you're putting things together, right?
going on, man,
Things
Bill?
you may need to move things around to make sure
I said,
that
what's wrong?
they're in the right spot
got something to
to
say,
make them
Mr.
sound
Byrd?
the way that you want them to sound.
Because a man got something to say, he should just say it. You got something to say?
No, sir, Mr. Brown.
Well, then you're just holding up the rehearsal, Mr. Bird. I can't have holding up the rehearsal.
Hold things up.
If I can't do it right, I ain't gonna do it at all. We got to get on, get ahead. Now you know the rules. If you're late, you're off, or you hold us up. It's no good, Mr. Bird. It's gonna cost you half a yard. Macy, I like the party plan.
Mess
I just
around,
want it in a different place.
lose your money messing with Mr. Brown.
What's this here?
James Brown didn't play.
A snare, Mr. Brown.
Us now what? Correct. What's this?
A guitar.
No, it's not. Pee Wee, what's this?
Drum, Mr. Brown?
Now we getting it. What's Macy holding?
Drum, Mr. Brown.
Fellas,
Oh,
what's them shiny
everybody's got a
things y'all
drum.
holding over there?
Drums.
Now we all got our drums. Now when you're playing a drum, it don't matter what key you in, what bar you in, what planet you on.
But Mr. Brown, Clyde will be in a different time than the rest of the band. It doesn't work musically.
How many hit records you got, sir? Huh?
How many hit records you
Fellas,
got?
does it sound good?
Yeah.
Does it it feel good? God made your ears. You didn't make them. You gonna argue with God's ears? If it sound good and it feel good, then it's musical. So play it like I say play it. From the top. 1, 2, 1, 2, hit it! Double. I don't care!
All right, so we got James Brown played by Chadwick Boseman, and one of the main concept or one of the main things about this clip that I like is he compared every instrument to a drum, right? And one thing, one of the and so when you're thinking about putting beats together, right? We're thinking about where things are lining up, and sometimes if you think of things, especially with rhythm, and that's what we're going to talk about here in just a minute, is how things are lining up. But one of the main things about making beats, and what you should be thinking about is when he said if it sounds good and it feels good, then it's musical. Okay. So those are one of the things that you want to think about when making your beats. Does it sound good? Does it feel good? Then it's musical. Okay. So sometimes these elements of music or music theory, these are all just guides for you. Okay. So let's talk about one of the. So what I'm gonna bring up is so these three elements really go together, and the tempo, meter, and rhythm. These are so each one is its own different element, but they really go together. And if you think about in the clip, we're talking about it doesn't matter where you're at, what key you're in or what planet you're on. If you have the right pulse and you're playing the right meter and you got the rhythm going, those things all go together. Okay, so let's talk about tempo for a minute. Tempo is really what tempo means: time. So the elements of music is really about how you organize your beat. Okay, so using the elements of music on how you organize your beat to make something musical. So tempo is you're gonna start off with the tempo, and that's one of the things that producers and beat makers sometimes struggle with, is finding the right tempo for the song, right? Because if the tempo isn't right, it just throws things off just a little bit, and so it's finding the right tempo. Meter. So when we talk about meter, there's all different types of meters out there. Most commonly, so for me, when I make beats, my beats are really, my music is really focused around hip hop, R&B, funk, jazz, those things, and a lot of in the meter is normally going to be what is called common time or 4/4 time. So the meter, so that pulse, and when I think about the pulse, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And that's a lot of Western music today or popular music. There's other meters in there, and you'll hear it, but the most, like I said, it's called common time. That's the most common time is 4/4 time. So the meter, so the tempo, right, is how fast or slow you're playing, and the meter is the pulse. Okay, and so sometimes we think of the rhythm as the beat, right? We think of the rhythm as the beat. Well, the rhythm has to fall in line with the tempo and meter. So remember, the person that was playing Maceo was saying that, Clyde, who was the drummer, he said he'll be in a different time from the rest of the band. Well, what that meant is that his meter might be a little bit different, but the pulse is the same, right? But we're keeping the same pulse. So his rhythm might be a before or after where the band is, but the meter is staying the same, the pulse is staying the same, the tempo is staying the same. So I have this. So I kind of have this. I have this groove kind of loaded up to kind of give us an example on how tempo, meter, and rhythm really work into creating our beats. Okay. So back in the just keeping with the theme of James Brown, you can hear, you know, the pulse of it, right? You feel the pulse, and so we got this tempo going. Now, what happens? What happens if I slow down the tempo? What happens if I slow down the tempo? So I take the tempo. So I take the tempo all the way down. Now the pulse is still the same. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The rhythm stayed the same, right? Ba 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 da 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 ba da 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 da. Right. So the tempo, so the rhythm kind of stayed the same, but the tempo changed. It slowed way down, and so the feel of the song is. You know what I'm saying? So everything, so the meter and rhythm stay the same, but the tempo slowed down. So now it doesn't really just doesn't, you know, it doesn't feel right, right? Meaning that, so like I said, finding the right tempo for your song is going to be very important. Just in contrast, what happens if I speed up this tempo? So if I speed it up to about right here, it just doesn't have that, right? It's just not the same. It doesn't groove the same. It's so fast, it just doesn't groove the same. Too slow, right? It was just like, it seemed like there wasn't enough. It wasn't enough going on. It didn't really groove, right? But if we put it back, that tempo, right? That tempo is really that's really important when making your beat. So sometimes you got to make sure that you have for whatever song you're creating, whatever genre of music that you're going to be playing, you want to make sure that you have the correct tempo, tempo, meter, rhythm, because that's going to be very important, when you're putting your beats together. So like I said, no matter what genre you're in, finding that tempo and understanding the pulse. The pulse is the meter, and then what rhythms go with that tempo and pulse. Okay, so that's very important. And I kind of got off track because I was just thinking about just even like 1 or 2 beats per minute, right, can really change how the beat really just goes together. So I can't kind of hammer that. To me, the tempo, meter, and rhythm are the main, really the most important elements of music when making beats. Okay, so and maybe you're sampling music and you have a sample. The meter is really important, right? Meaning that what if the sample that you have is in 3/4 time, but you're trying to make it fit 4/4 time. How does that, how are you going to make that sample work? So understanding different meters on how you can make things, fit together when you're making your beats, or you're sampling something that's 70 beats per minute, but you want to bring it up to 85 beats per minute, right? These are all things that you need to think about when putting your beats together. So the tempo, meter, and the rhythm, really go hand in hand, and it's really important. Okay. The next, dynamics. What plays a part in the dynamics? So, or what are dynamics, and how do you use that within making your beat? So dynamics is how loud or quiet pieces of or elements of your music, or pieces of instrumentation where they fit. And dynamics really plays a part really when you're mixing your beat, right? You want to, do you want to have something, really loud? What needs to be loud, what needs to kind of be in the middle, and what needs to be, a little bit more softer, kind of just underneath the beat. So one thing that stands out so we'll just take the drums for example, right? Like you really want, especially with today's music, you want that, you want that 808 to be hitting, right? You want that really, really in your face, that, that 808 bass, and you want that snare to really just smack, right? Now, sometimes, so you got the bass and the snare, kind of smacking, and they're playing off each other. But then you got this hi-hat. And how loud should that hi-hat be, right? It should be kind of right there in the middle. It shouldn't be too high to where the hi-hat is really just taking over, right? So you want to make sure that you're dialing down some things to make sure that the levels are good, so that the dynamics, right? The dynamics between each piece of music is being able to play off each other. Also, how does that work, moving into transitions, right? Or coming up to, a very important part to where you need something, maybe on an intro you start off quiet and you gradually get louder till you get to that chorus or that main hook, right? And you come into the main part of your beat. So the dynamics, is really, the dynamics are icing on the cake on when, things are loud, or something comes in and it just hits your ear faintly, and then it goes away, and you're like, whoa, what was that, right? But it was soft, but it was there, and it wasn't too strong. Or something just comes in, like a singer just comes in and just hits that note, and it's really, really, the dynamics is just really strong, it's out there, and it just draws your attention in, right? So dynamics is how loud or soft, your something is playing, within your beat. And this is what you want to take into consideration. Sometimes the hi-hat dynamic, so let's just go back to the hi-hat dynamic, right? Is you got maybe, the hi-hat is hitting on, it's playing eighth notes, right? And the first eighth note is strong, and the second eighth note is weak. So it's just like strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, right? You can see how the beat, right? It's hitting on the same time, but that strong, weak, that pushes things forward, and that adds a different element to the groove of the song. So the dynamics. Uh, let's talk about tonality. Uh, and so in the clip, you heard it said that the like parts, it doesn't work musically, because where one part of the band is playing compared to the other part of the band, they're they're not in the same, they may not be on the same chord. But what James Brown understood is that they may not be on the same chord, but they're in the same tonality. What do I mean by tonality? So when you talk about, somebody singing off key, what that means is that they're singing outside of the main tonality of the music. So when you're putting your beats together, uh, you want to think about, what key am I in? Or, what's the main tonality? Is it in the key of C? Is it the key of C major, or is it the key of C minor, or is it A flat major, or B flat minor? Right? These are things, terms that people throw around, uh, but understanding the tonality of it, right? With the overall tonality. Also, when you're maybe when you're sampling, right? You're sampling, you get this sample, and you're like, hey, what? And you're trying to figure out, what other parts can I put into this sample so that it sounds good. And so what happens is that sometimes people struggle understanding what the main tonality is of that sample or of that beat. Uh, you'll start to go other places when you understand the main tonality and understand where you can go outside of the tonality and then bring it back in again, right? And that just adds more interest to your beats. So the tonality, the main key of the song, that's the tonality. Now this next one coming up, talking about, and this one is this one is huge, and you can spend a lot of time on it, and a lot of producers and beat makers really spend, I would say the bulk of their time trying to find the right timbre. What do I mean by timbre? Timbre is the quality of the sound that an instrument makes. So I don't know if you're trying, when you're trying to find the right timbre of the snare drum, right? There's all different, right? There's all different snare drums. There's all different ways to mic a snare drum, right? A lot of recording engineers are, trying to find the right timbre for that snare drum, or the right timbre on how they're miking that drum. Or you got all these samples or different drum sounds, and you're trying to find just that right snare. You're like, hey, I'm trying to find this snare on, that was used on on this beat I heard, you're trying to find that timbre. Or timbre is what's the difference between the trumpet and the guitar, right? They both have a different sound. So the timbre, so one is finding the right timbre, right, or the right sound for the instrument that you're going to be, using for a particular, part in your song. But also, are you putting those sounds one in the right place in your song? Are you using the right instruments in timbre for the right song? I mean, for example, are you using uh, the bass to try to play a lead guitar part? Are using the bass guitar to play the lead guitar part, but you have nothing filling out that bottom end because you're like, I'm using the bass for this high lead, like, or uh, you're using just you're using, let's say, a trumpet sound to play the main chord progression of the song. And these things can get you, thrown off, right? So you want to make sure that you're using the right instruments, the right sound for what you're trying to create. So timbre, you can definitely go down the rabbit hole of trying to find the right sound. uh, People spend hours trying to, one is getting the right sound, and yeah, like sound design, like like that's a whole nother thing to get into on, when creating your beats. But so the timbre is one thing, that, making sure that you have the right sounds for your beat. Okay, so timbre is definitely the one. Now let's get to the last one, which is texture. And so texture really gets thrown around very loosely when talking about music. Okay, and but what texture in is really pulling all of the elements together into creating a piece of music. So you're taking the tempo, meter, and rhythm, and you're pulling in the tonality, how you play the chord progression, uh, what how are the drums played, what's the underlining bass part. This all goes into the texture. So the texture is really pulling things together. So the main texture in common music is um, uh, homophonic, the homophonic texture. What that means is you have accompaniment to your melody. Okay, so that's really the main texture. Now, how you create that accompaniment is really going to add to the texture, right? So you're pulling in, what type of sounds, what type of timbre, instruments that you're going to use to accompany the you know, the the melody. And the melody could be played by, several different instruments, right? You could have a female vocalist, a male vocalist, a hip hop artist, a violinist, so really those are things. Now, one thing that where texture really, what we really want to think about texture, especially with making beats, is having a polyrhythmic texture. That's really the polyrhythmic. So going back to the clip with of Get On Up, what James Brown was really trying to, when hit the texture of his music was, he was really trying to create a polyrhythmic texture to really create the groove. And that's one thing that you really want to think about in pulling things together. That's why I said the tempo, meter, and rhythm is so important, because having those polyrhythmic textures into your and putting that into your beats is really going to play a big part. So I just want to, I got one more example to load up to kind of give you an example of texture. So let me just load this up really quick, and we can go over texture for a second. Let's take a listen to this texture as let's see, make sure. So this is just the 2-5-1 progression. Not much, movement to it, right? But I just wanted to, so you can hear it, but you can hear the progression, but there's not much movement. The bass and the chords are really playing at that same rhythm. And the only thing giving it some type of rhythmic movement is the drum. So nothing really there, right? But let's see what we can do if we can add a little bit different rhythms to some of these parts. Same chord progression. But now there's this walking bass line, which is kind of staying on this, these quarter notes. And then the piano kind of changes up its rhythm, right? So same chord progression as that first example, but you can hear how the texture, the polyrhythmic texture is a little bit different. So those are things that you definitely want to be thinking about when making your beats. The texture is really pulling everything together. So it's pulling together the tempo, meter, and rhythm, the dynamics. Pulling in the dynamics, the tonality, making sure that you're in the right key, or if you need to go outside of the key, make sure that it's musical, make sure that it sounds good and feels good. Okay. Also remember, when you're making your beats, one thing that you might have to use when somebody says, what kind of beat is that, or or that's not going to work, you ask them how many hit records they have. And if they got hit records, then maybe you listen to them. But if they have no hit records, well, then you got to go with what you think sounds good, what you think feels good. Okay, so I do want to thank you again for checking out my channel. Remember, subscribe to my channel, hit the bell for any notifications. Leave a comment down below. And especially if you have any questions about the elements of music, or anything that I covered today. Also, again, follow me on Instagram at Juanis Williams. I do have some of my beats that I'm working on here and there on my YouTube channel. And again, I do thank you for checking out the channel, and let's get in the groove.